Great. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of this discussion today. This is the fourth topic that we are going to cover in this edition of GACS webinar, which have been happening in the last 2 weeks. Very relevant topics have been covered. Uh, uh, Very interesting discussions from speakers from various companies coming and sharing their thoughts, and right from procurement to facility management to trends that is going to come. So a lot of key pertinent topics have been covered, and I'm sure all of you have gained from it and would have learned something new and would have shared something as well. Today we are going to cover one of the again another key important topic is from the employee transport and social distancing and challenges that we are going to be having post lockdown. Before we go to the topic, let me just quickly introduce you to my co-panelists who are going to be here. Uh, is Debabrita Burman from Oakwen Financial Solutions. He is joining us from Mumbai. We have Vishwanath Sitaraman, who is a founder member of Orca. He's joining us from Bangalore. And my name is Manish Raj. I'm associated with Movin Singh Technology. I head their business on the core business from the SaaS point of view. That is the business which I'm handling, which is to do with ETS, Employee Transport Solutions, handling the business for India and international. And We're going to discuss some key questions, key topics, key suggestions which we have found in terms of the practices which companies are getting prepared with the SOPs which can really help. There are some things to do which has to be looked at. There were times when we were looking at good to have, and now we have certain things which has become must have because of the changes suddenly show thrown in. As I said before, just few housekeeping rules again. Let me just repeat for all the participants who have joined right now. Please mute your audio and video. Type your questions in the chat box that has been provided. You can email questions to all the speakers through email kchapter@gscs.world. And as I said, the views being shared here are by the speakers are the personal. Uh, Having said that, these personal views are obviously with all the experiences that they come with, and I'm sure we all will have a lot of takeaway and learning from this. I'm also going to be the moderator of this discussion today, and also a co-speaker as well. So, so what happened? What happened suddenly? Why are we even discussing this topic today? What made us, think that this is an important topic, and an association like GACS felt it important to highlight and bring up these kind of this topic as well today. What we're going to be discussing, because it's key. It's central to a lot of our operations across, irrespective of which industry we come from, whether it's manufacturing industry where you transport your employees to your factories, or it's ITS companies and spread across the country or even internationally. We're just doing a webinar. I was just doing a webinar a couple of days back with my clients in South Africa, and the problems remains the same. The problem hasn't changed. It's just the same issue. People traveling from public transport, people being making them come back to work, the restriction that has to be in place, the sanitation concerns, the face mask, the sanitizers which has to be provided, a lot of uh, which has a direct impact on the cost as well. So we will cover some of these key questions as we move side, whether it is from a supply side, whether it is from a customer side, which is from the corporate side, and from a service provider point of view. Everybody has their own challenges today, but we are all in it together, and we all have to make it work as well. Uh, what so if you look at some fact which was happening, and we were used to a normal situation which our life was going absolutely fine. We were spending more time in terms of our transportation. We were using public transport, we were using walking, we were doing using personal motorbikes and all of that kind. Look at this whole picture of India before pre-COVID, and then what we saw, people were using their personal car, they were using private car, they were hiring the cars and using it across. Whether it was North India, while it staggeringly has high usage of personal cars usage, but the story is not different in any other city as well. And that's what we were used to. We were using personal cars, we were using corporate car type transportation, we were using public transportation to reach. But today, with the current scenario, a lot may not be the same normal. A new normal, as we are been talking about, that is going to take place, which is going to make quite a difference. It's going to bring in, and a lot of operational challenges, which is going to bring in. manually may not be possible. So a lot of tech assistance will be required. Technology itself has to change on its own in terms of what needs to have and what doesn't needs to have. What is the priority we have to look at? And so we're going to cover some of this topic. But let me quickly bring in my co-panelists, and I would like to put a question to my colleague to Dave. And Dave, let's look at the new normal. What happened in month of March? March is when our lives were going very absolutely fine. We were coming to work.
Yes, Manish.
Just before Holi, everything was absolutely normal. Work from home
Normal.
was
Yeah.
like 5%, and by 23rd of March, we were thrown into a situation where
Uh,
95% of the work started moved to work from home, and that was a new normal suddenly, and we were still struggling. What were the challenges you faced as an organization, as somebody from a core team, to ensure that your BCP continues? I'm sure it won't have a very easy situation at all to deal with. So what was your experience?
yes,
Would you like
Manish.
to share?
Yeah, Manish. It was on 14th, most probably. It was 14th or 13th, where the government was really shaken up with the number of patients coming up, with the COVID-19 patients coming up, and India was gearing up with certain measures to go for a lockdown situation. So that was a time where we were really having a panic situation, where how the employees would continue to work. That was a situation where we were taking the measures to get the first, the internet connections had to be acquired. Second was the laptop distribution to the employees who were to be working from home. Third was to deploy those laptops to their residences. That was the third challenge. So these are the three consecutive challenges which we were facing on the span of 72 hours. 20th was the lockdown, where it was declared by the government. However, it was on 19th night where we had to gear up with all the internet connections, as well as the procurement of the laptops, as well as to deploy them in the cars to the employees' home who were not there in the office, because most of the shifts were already end. So it was not transporting the employees at the point of time in the cars. It was transporting of the laptops and dongles were being seen at the end of the day on 21st and 22nd. Manish.
Wow. And I'm sure from transporting people, which you were looking at, now you are doing transportation of logistics, right?
Correct.
And going back to doing the basic was absolutely a different ball game to do. So
Correct. Yeah.
what do you we'll come back to that question, but let me just quickly go to Vishwanath as well. And Vishwanath, what's your opinion? Just before pre-COVID, we were seeing a different scenario altogether. Let me just take you to that slide, and why don't you throw some light on this as to what was in Bangalore? How was Bangalore geared up? What was the actual normal in Bangalore before?
See, actually, thanks Manish and Ellarigu Namaskara. And the thing that I have observed pre-COVID is that we had a lot of commute in terms of congestions in Bangalore city. मतलब, in terms of Bangalore city as such, as a benchmark, if I can take it, it was like 2 hours one way to reach office, 2 hours back to office, back to home, and in fact, many a times it was also taking more than a couple of hours, especially for people from Whitefield towards the south side of Bangalore. Other than that, people used to spend nearly 15 to 20% of their productive time just by commuting, which, if I actually calculate, it's about 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes a kilometer. So, these are some parameters that I've observed. And the reason for this is it's literally about 5 to 6 million of people who used to travel, not just taking IT into consideration, even in terms of garment factories, even in terms of the government officials, be it school buses or school vehicles, and so on and so forth. BMTC and the corporates joined hands, and they have definitely done some good kind of initiatives in terms of reducing the transport. But I think over and above that, the last point I would like to highlight is even metro. Once metro had come in, it did take some load of traffic, but I think unless and until all the entire metro rail is connected across the city, this chaos would have still continued. Back to you, Manish.
Yeah. So what do you get to hear from all the panelists is that so far is things were quite normal. We were used to a normal, and now we are thrown into an absolutely new situation. Dave, let me just come back to you and ask you a very pertinent question before we move further on this. What measures you will be undertaking to help employees come back? Like one of the biggest challenge which is going to be is convincing the employees to get back to the workplace, and transport being one of the key factor here. Considering that public transport is going to be a worrisome point, uh, has the company? Do you think there is a strategy around it? What's going to happen? How are you going to monitor your employee movement? How are you going to now bring in transport for them?
So Manish, it is basically as an organization, most of the organization, as I'm speaking to the industry people also, they are not getting the entire population to the office on the first day. They are going to a staggered manner. First they will try and see how what are the government norms are coming down into place, what are
Hmm.
the RTO rules are being placed with the new COVID-19 guidelines. On those basis, most probably we will be taking the line ahead to get the employees to the office. However, it will be in a staggered manner. 10%, 20%, 25%. We will see how it goes, and from there onwards, we will take it forward to the full strength if it is possible.
And what are the plans to deal with the pandemic right now?
So one thing is there that the sanitization, yeah, is a key factor first. Second is the social distancing. Third is the employee awareness. Employee awareness, if when I speak, it is both side of the corporate, both side of the vendor. For corporate is the employees, for the vendor side is the drivers. So
Okay.
these are the these are the three main factors which our corporate needs to deal with, to take acute steps to prevent the employees getting infected, or to getting contaminated with the disease.
Are you already in discussion with your vendors and cap suppliers, or what the plans you have in with regard to that?
Yes, there are certain discussions which are already we are already doing it. With the
Hmm.
new normal, Manish, it will be something like it is a different ball game altogether. Yesterday we used to accommodate about 4 people in a car. Today we can only ferry one. So as I said, we are waiting for the guidelines of the RTO, how to RTO guidelines to cover up this gap.
Vishwanath, would you like to comment on that? Let me just come to you quickly and ask you with regard to the vehicle, the mandates that is going to be placed. Are there any government notifications around that? How is the industry preparing for it?
Absolutely, Manish. In fact, a couple of points which have been rightly covered by them, I would just like to elaborate some of them. So, one is definitely, just like I was summarizing, Deb, I think, has given a couple of points which are really, really important for the post-COVID scenario to control the pandemic. So, one is definitely in terms of occupancy, which is anywhere between 25% to 50%. Though the government has said that we can go up to 50% post the COVID lockdown. I think most of the corporates that I have been talking to, including ourselves, we are kind of ready to kind of allow at least about 33% of the people to come in the first phase, and so on and so forth in the second, third, and the final phase. So that is the one. That is one point. Second point is, it's not just the employees from the corporate side that we need to hand manage, but also in terms of driver, and not just the drivers, but also in terms of the staff, the back end staff whom we have to train in terms of how to sanitize, what are the mandates, what are the expectations, etc., etc. And not just communicate, but I think over communicate to people before the day zero, which is before the day of the operation. And more than anything else, I would also like to highlight that we need to, this is the right time to kind of approach our tech service provider. And I think in this passionate session, Manish, I would request you to kind of explain what are the technologies what is the kind of technology that can help us avoid contacts with these with the staff, avoid human error, etc., etc. Back to you, Manish.
Thank you, Vishwanath. That was quite interesting to understand from the government point of view and from the expectations from the vehicle as well. Very rightly said. I think in all of this activity, while we all have a different challenge to deal with, both manually and from a technology partner point of view. Also, if you're looking at just as a technology, is this the right time to now look at technology to manage your transportation? Yes, and that would be my very decisive answer. Yes, it will be. But and the reason why, because today what is very critical from transport management is getting the right information. First of all, the information of the zones, the information of the employees, who you want to bring in, whether they are in green zone or they are in red zone, because you don't do not, you have a you have a facility where you want to bring in employees, you also want to convince your employee as to why they should come to work and how, what steps you have taken in terms of their convenience and from a safety and health point of view. And that's critical. No company wants to really look at creating situation where their own staff fall sick. So I think it is our business to ensure that the population is well protected, and for that we'll have to arrange and rearrange and take necessary steps. Whatever we are going to be talking right now are the steps which we are thinking that will work. This is all that is only to ensure that the contamination doesn't happen. Let me just quickly look at how technology will help. And technology will probably help you from giving you ideas on the zone. As I said earlier, the information is going to be critical. Communication with the staff is going to be critical based on the geography where they come from, based on the shift that they belong to, or which office they're going to go. I'm sure many companies have multiple offices in the same city, so you probably may not. And if you one of your offices in the red zone, maybe you'll not be operating that, but you'll have be operating from other offices. Who do you bring in is going to be critical. The system should be able to give you those informations when you are looking at it. The system should also give you a EHS form, basically, where you can actually fill and see every 2 hours when you are putting a vehicle on for deployment. You should ensure that the vehicle is sanitized, the driver's health is checked. I think in all of this activity today, more than employee, the critical part is going to be driver, and driver's health is going to be very, very important to look
Very
at.
important,
And
yes.
one has to also ensure that the driver is well taken care of, because he's going to get your employees. The last thing you want is the transport should be transporting the employees and not it shouldn't along.
So Manish, we are losing you.
Important to know as to, because body information will be the same in tomorrow. From red to green, red. So you have to.
I guess there's a problem with the network.
Yeah, there is a problem with the network, Manish. So let me take if you can hear me, if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Sorry.
So Jatin, can I take over?
Manish has come back.
Yeah,
I'm just back. Sorry about that. I just didn't know what happened. But yeah, so I was just talking that you need to ensure that you have a contactless sign-in happening, so that the employee is not touching the device of a driver. There's a minimal hand contact. What would be your need from a technology standpoint of view? If I just quickly come in between and ask you this question, what would you want your employees to do?
So Manish, the first thing which I want my employees to do is to not to touch anything which is there inside the car.
Right.
The first thing is that it should be a contactless transportation available. Today, most of the companies are using the OTP-based check-ins, checkouts. If that is possible to be done, if a contactless infrared cards are being used, that will be much more better. So if the HDMI cards has got a span of 3 meters to swiping, that will be one of the choices. So it is something. It has to be totally contactless, and with the new norms which is coming, I think everything should be every second trip. We need to sanitize the car. So these are the main things which is required now.
Right. So that's something. What are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Manish,
So,
I have a small doubt. Sorry to interrupt. Before that, all this process takes place, the technology and all that. What guarantee is there that the driver is not affected with this virus?
no,
Are you
so
going to take any medical certificate from the doctor
So
and
we will
ask
take
him?
all the questions in the end, if you don't mind, please.
Sure, sure.
we will take the questions, yeah. But let's just show this. But yeah, a very important point just came in between. But yes, there has to be undertaking taken by the driver. The vendor which is providing the vehicle has to ensure that the drivers being deployed, first of all, don't come from the red zone. The vehicle is not in the red zone. And if they're coming on duty back when you're using them, you have done a thorough check. and that records have been maintained in your EHS forms. So for all the record, because every day you'll have to keep doing this activity. So it's important that you monitor that, and the digital platform only going to help you to ensure that the data is collected on real time and it's not fudged. It's not like somebody doesn't accidentally also misses to put it in paper. So between paper and digital, of course, digital will be easier for you to keep a track of everything. Like you said, contactless sign-in, that's going to be an important thing. The other thing which is also going to be important is the routing from a red zone to green zone to orange zone. I'm sure we would not like our vehicle to go cross a red zone, so we would probably be avoiding those zones as well. So the technology should be able to give me primarily three important aspects of it. One is that it should be able to give me a contactless sign-in. The technology should also help me to give me a real-time information about the zones, which means it should be updated every 2 hours. And after, for the next 6 hours, if there is a schedule, that schedule should be getting updated accordingly. So that is the information you would require. Let me just show you from a contactless sign-in, which you said. There are two kinds of contactless sign-in today one can do. As you said, OTP, Dave, OTP is there. And the other thing is the employee also is carrying an app with them. So far, they used to punch in a PIN number in the driver's device. Today, they can just do it in their own device the moment they get into the cab. So, and obviously the cab is sanitized. So you can always have a question, how will the employee know the cab is sanitized? If the cab is not sanitized, and if the transport team hasn't given it a green ahead, and if it has not followed the mandatory cycle that has to be done, it won't be deployed. So system will not allow to get the vehicle deployed. Now we can always have technology come in and show on the employees app as well, to show that the vehicle has been sanitized, and some kind of information can be shown from there. So this is one of the way you can look at it. The second is, as we said, the zones. It's important from the zone point of view. A lot of questions have come. There are two critical parts. One is, if you see in this part is primarily the alarm. The moment the vehicle enters the red zone, the screen becomes red, the driver gets aware, he's informed by the device itself to turn back, and by you are entering the red zone. It also informs the security command center that this vehicle has entered a red zone, so you can immediately take measures there. From a transport department, it's very, very important that these informations are coming on time. Secondly, also, if you are looking at a driver is being deployed and an Arogya Setu, which Vishwa will talk more about it later. But on the device, you can actually see that the Arogya Setu is being app is there with this driver, and you'll be able to get the information about that. So that's going to be critical from a zone point of view, from the routing point of view, and from the what employee can see on the device for him to or her to aware of which is a red zone and which is not a red zone. So that's going to be critical. This is something where you also see. I'm just giving you some illustrations here. It's important to know who do you bring in. Where are these employees from? If they are in from green zone, then you are going to bring them. But obviously, you can't bring everybody together, because only 30 to 50%, as Vishwa had told earlier, 33% to begin with, and staggering up to 50% later by end of June, let's say. So in that case, you need to deploy employees basis certain logic internally, whether you want to call them on an odd day or an even day and things like that. So you can actually, but you need to know, have the list of those employees to who has to be called, and you need to communicate with them. So here is option where you can connect basis the geographies with they are based at, which is the shift they are. So you can actually do a direct communication from the app itself, from your desktop to, the desktop which you have in the company where you're looking at the dashboard. You can communicate from there to the employee can get it on their app. So that's how you can actually look at, technology can help you to do your routings, and you can look at from zone information. So technology quickly solves a lot of key immediate requirement. But let's just move from technology, and I hope what's your feedback on this? Do you think this is relevant, Dave?
Yes, yes, Manish. It is relevant. It is just too much relevant because most of the companies are trying to avoid their employees coming down in the public vehicles. That is the first thing what they are trying to stop. Yes, it is also making making the corporates or the companies to think over how would the cost impact will happen, because today if they are about 50% of the employees are taking transport, tomorrow we have to give it to 100% of the employees. So that is the second question which comes on, Manish. And we are also we have to maintain the social distancing norms. So these are the three factors which will be much more much more implicative at the point of time how to start the new normal.
Yeah, so yes, rightly said, the social distancing is going to be critical. The technology should be able to give you that opportunity where you can maintain those social distancing within the transport environment as well.
Correct.
We will come to that a little later in the few subsequent slide as to what kind of seating should be advised for this. But it's important that you first get the relevant information for you to take a right decision.
Correct.
And then two of the things which is going to be critical, what I assume is most companies are going to avoid people using public transport, because
Yeah.
that can be a direct carrier. In Bangalore, for example, BMTC buses are used for certain companies' transportation. I will come to Vishwa on that to talk a little more about that on the topic of how the buses can be used in, and if they're continuing using it from the government sources or from the um, private sources, what can be done, what kind of steps be taken. Let's quickly move to what are the common threats and high risk situations for COVID to spread. How will it, and what we have all today understood and know, and it is like amply established in the world, that the virus has spread all across without having any respect for the boundaries, national boundaries of any country, and it is just spreading like anything. One of the reasons for it to spread is because of the contact, human to human contact, which is happening, and the only way you do it is stop that contact, reduce that contact, create situation where the contacts can be avoided between people. People who are who are sneezing or coughing are taking enough steps to cover their face to with a two layer of cloth even as a mask, or they're carrying sanitizers. A lot of cleaning is going to happen for every regular thing, the commonly used touch points like the lift buttons or even the door handles and
Door
switches.
handles. Yeah.
Yeah, so what are the kind of challenges you are looking at from a threat point of view, and how are you want to go, how are you looking at mitigating that, Devakita?
So Manish,
So,
it is something like it is the frequent sanitization is the only option. So it is basically we have to keep a set of people sanitizing my office and a set of people sanitizing my cars. So it is basically it is a cycle of two. It is basically we can do a gap of every 2 trips a car does. It comes back to a sanitization process and goes for the third trip. That sort of a cycle we need to define for everybody to be safe.
Mhm.
So it is basically it will be impacting both the things. In fact, my cycle to churn the car at the point of time, because one sanitation will take at least 30 to 45 minutes to do an entire sanitation of a car. So it will be a different challenge altogether, Manish. We have to find out some solution for that.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Vishwanath, quickly, let me just bring in you. And what are your thoughts on the public transport, and especially even if you are going to use a public transport hired purposely for just to your company, even if you have reserved that bus, what are the steps one should look at?
So thanks, Manish. I would like to kind of highlight it's not just the public transport that I would be referring to. Any kind of any mode of transport, be it public, be it a BMTC bus, be it a corporate, be it a private bus, be it a private tempo traveler or a car. The first and foremost thing that we need to do is ensure, like what Dave said, is sanitizing. Sanitizing is the first thing. But what happens is if we have a better control, I feel when we go with the private support vendor partner, the only reason is the buses can be dedicated. Generally, all these private vendors have a buses or a TT dedicated to a particular company. But in the case of a public transport, these can be used by multiple users. So even if you go with the public transport, and as you know it, though we have kind of support public transport in terms of economy, in terms of safety, in terms of availability of 24/7, I would say that unless and until these public transport vehicles are dedicated to a particular company, it will be difficult to kind of go ahead with the public transport. Okay, this is the first thing. Second thing is in terms of a private transport person, but the apps can be very easily kind of coordinated with the private transport vendor owner. But with the public transport, it might not be impossible, but it might be difficult to do it in a very short period of time in terms of pictures, in terms of educating, because there has to be some government norms that any public transport provider has to follow, and we have to kind of get into an agreement into that as per the government rules and regulations. So it will be slightly delayed in terms of a public transport. Okay, but with a private carrier, it will be easy for us to kind of guide him, take him on a call, take him on a video call, making sure the vehicles are arranged at the parking lot or at his office space, etc., etc., and we can make sure the sanitation is taken place. The third point that I want to highlight, especially when it comes to the private transport, is that all these drivers, all the back-end staff, etc., we can make sure that we communicate to them during all the shifts as per the company norms. But generally, when we go to a public transport mode, there are some specific timings where we need to be inclined and we have to realign the corporates to their timings, which is slightly difficult in the current scenario. These are some points, and back to you, Manish.
Thanks, Vishwa. Thanks. Very, very insightful. What I gather here is that if you're going to use a bus, let's say a BMTC bus, for example, which a lot of companies are practicing, that bus should be blocked just for that company and should be parked within the premises and should be sanitized as per the format process that what the company has decided for it. You cannot let that bus go back and do public transport use and then come back in the evening to take your stuff. Now
Absolutely.
that puts you at a risk. So good, great point. Thank you so much. Let's just go and what are the kind of best practices one can follow? And I would ask both of you to
Yeah.
throw light both from a public transport and from a regular company transport point of view. Dave, over to you.
Um, Manish, first, basically, which I told previously also is that public transport, we do not have a control. Public transport comes down from its own, public transport comes out with its own challenges and plus points also. However, as it belongs to certain government controls, so it will have its own way of getting it cleaned, disinfected, and moved to the roads. But however, it is catering to the public, and we do not have the control on the public.
Yeah, let's look at the company transport. What kind of seating
Okay.
you're expecting? What kind
So
of
so 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 today we are looking for at least one. We used to cater 1:4 for a sedan. Today we are thinking to do it 1:1. That is basically a four-seater car is to carry about four people. So it was including the driver. So now it will be one driver and one employee. What is according to the new norms coming up? So it will be a 50% of the reduction. 50% of the reduction of seating capacity will be given to the larger vehicles like a bus or tempo traveler or a six-seater vehicle. These are the major changes which we see, and we are still waiting for the RTO norms and regulation coming up, and we will be abiding with that.
But yeah, what it comes out that the distance has to be maintained between the two people. If you're in the office, you have to have a 3 to 6 feet difference distance between each of you. If you're using a transport, there also has to be a significant amount of distance so that there's no contact happening. And if you look at a bus, for example, it needs to have a zigzag seating arrangement. So if you have somebody sitting on the window, the person sitting behind should be on the aisle seat, and the third row it should be on the back to the window. So that's the kind of, and we have illustrated some of the steps that has to be taken in terms of the seating, whether it's a car, it's a sedan, or it's a SUV, or it's a bus when you're using it. Vishwa, you want to add
Yeah,
some point?
Manish. Yes, Manish. In fact, one very primary point that I would like to highlight is, especially for a pickup and drop of a lady employee, if at all it is happening after the dark hours, then I think we have to
Yeah.
assign a vehicle which is a 6+1 seater, for the only reason that as per the current government norms, in a vehicle, in a sedan, in a 4+1, the security and the driver who are currently seated next to each other cannot be seating so in
Correct.
the after the post cordon. So post lockdown scenario. So the security has to be seated in either the back or in the center, and the lady employee can be seated at the back or in the center. Okay, and diagonally opposite to both security as well as the driver. So this is one very, very important point that all the corporates need to kind of monitor. Okay, so whenever there should be a checklist in the technology, the technology side, where if at all it kind of reflects a lady employee, then immediately it should select only a Xylo or probably a Innova or that kind of a vehicle. That is the first point. Second point is, in terms of a company provided transport, we have to have what is called a in-house COVID task force, which will probably consist of the transport manager, the facility manager, and the legal compliance manager from the corporate. The reason is the facility manager or the transport manager alone cannot handle the entire gamut of transport in this kind of a scenario, because he will not know what are the legal implications, what are the legalities of these points that the government is kind of coming up every now and then. So the best person would be the legal person who will be able to guide the transport manager or the facility manager. And why the facility manager? Because the facility manager is directly linked to the transport managers in terms of helping the vehicles, the drivers, sanitization, the printouts which has to get into the vehicle, including maybe food and beverages that has to be supplied to the drivers in the night shift or in the day shift, etc., etc. So these three people have to form an in-house COVID task force and a common helpline ID, which has to be accessible 24/7 exclusively to these three people. And these three people need to also make sure that they report in directly to the MD or the CEO of the company for an immediate decision without any hierarchical steps in between. Okay. And the other point that I would like to highlight, which is rightly mentioned in the illustration, is that the vehicle, though it can, if we say that 50% of the occupancy in a bus or in a tempo traveler straight away brings it to 50%, but I would still recommend to have it as 33%. The reason is, if you see a tempo traveler, it's always better to have an alternate seating, so the first row has one person, second row has the second person at the left side or the diagonally opposite side, etc., etc. So on and so. If you have a 13-seater, I don't think you can go beyond 4 to 5 people in a tempo traveler also. And last but not the least, making sure that all these communications are rostered through the COVID task force 3 days prior to the actual lockdown opening day, and ensuring that you have a video conferencing with the driver, with the site in charges, and explaining to them that currently they may not use the same percentage of vehicles that they used earlier, but they need to gear up with additional vehicles, whether it is TTs or whether it is buses or whether it's a Swaraj Mazda kind of vehicles. So I think these are some very, very crucial points that we have to make sure that it's not only communicated to our employees, but also to the entire transport team, be it a parking supervisor or be it the vendor owner. This back to you, Manish.
So this is certainly going to increase the demand of supply. In terms of, the supply is going to be a concern here in terms of getting so many vehicles, because first of all the occupancy is going to take a major hit, and plus the supply can also be a challenge. Is that a matter of concern for you, Dave?
I didn't get the question, Manish. Please.
Is the supply a matter of concern? Do you think corporate will have to relook at their whole strategy in terms of
see, one thing is there, Manish. So every company is coming down with a reduced manpower to operate. Yesterday, if it was operating with about 100% of the occupancy, now they will be operating with the 50% occupancy. However, to cater to the 50% occupancy of a organization, the requirement of the car is more. I agree, but how much more we need to get into the actual operation more, then only we can get the picture how much more the supply is required. So yes, it is a demand supply requirement, but how much is the requirement at the point of time is only assumptions in the market. So with the reduced occupancy at the point of time, Manish, if the reduction is coming down to 1:1, it will be 100% requirement inflation in the requirement.
True.
So that's what we can only assume. It is only waiting for the government directives on how do we go forward after with the new normal.
Thank you.
So Manish, just to add on to one point which Dave rightly mentioned, other than the government norms, I think there are some checklists and there are some points from the corporate side also which has to be kind of changed. Like for example, earlier it used to be only feedback on the cleanliness of the vehicle. Maybe this time we also need to add another point where we say sanitization of the vehicle as another additional point in the checklist. And the other point, one major point that I missed out probably during my discussion is that, there should not be any ad hoc pickups whenever we are kind of catering to the employees' pick and drops during this post-COVID, because no employee should be picked up if his or her name she is not there in the particular vehicle. So it should be a fixed roster, a fixed team, a fixed vehicle for the entire, at least if I would recommend at least for the 30 days schedule. So back to you, Manish.
Absolutely, which is what I was talking earlier also from a technology perspective. It should not allow People who are the only people who are only tagged for that particular day should be allowed, and there shouldn't be any ad hoc transportation happening. Let me just quickly move to the macro picture at workplaces, which also includes transportation. As you have heard earlier, the premises has to be sanitized, and we have to be vigilant enough to ensure that any disinfection of the vehicle is avoided. And disinfection of the vehicle is done, and and the sanitization is taken care. There should be enough communication everywhere, wherever there is a public where people are going to be coming in, or whether it's near the lift or in the vehicle or near the transport tape desk. There has to be enough communication for maintaining personal hygiene, to maintain distance, to maintain to ensure you are wearing the mask, you are carrying a sanitizer. These are the only ways you can avoid the contact. And then touch your face less as possible. Avoid touching your face as much as possible, because that is the best way. And keep washing your hand. These are the things which one has to look at. Vishwa, you want to just quickly come into and explain on the Arogya Setu? We're running short of time, so we'll just quickly
Absolutely,
cover.
absolutely. So, and like when we started the session, we were saying about the Arogya Setu app. I think this is something which has to be like a mandate, like I was saying about checklists. So I think Arogya Setu has to be a mandate in all the employees, all the staff, all the drivers, all the parking lot, housekeeping, security, etc. For the only reason that it alerts if at all there is any COVID positive person is very close by to you. Okay, so this being the what do you call, it's like a boon to the current scenario by the government. So I think all the corporates should make it a mandate and ensure that this is definitely present in all the employees' mobile. So back to you, Manish.
Right. Thank you so much. Let's just quickly move to some of the standard, best practices now we are in terms of the elevated personal hygiene issues that we are going to be earlier we have discussed most of the point, but this is for everybody to look at and understand. There has to be a zigzag seating, which was brought out by us. You have to relook at the seating in your smaller vehicles, or if you're using the vehicle mix, your fleet mix has to be designed accordingly now. The employee list has to be triggered to the driver app. That is your trip sheets to be triggered to driver's app. And you need to avoid that any contact with the device should be not happening. So contactless login we have already discussed about. You have to have a face protection piece on your as a mask there, which should be worn by the employees and the drivers all the time. The driver should be in control of that. The driver should be given that power to stop an employee if they are not wearing or maintaining the hygiene norm which has been defined by the company. So he should be having a right to refuse that. And deep sanitization. Somebody had asked question what kind of sanitization can be used for. We have just a suggestion here with any phenolic solution or a 1% sodium hypochlorite solution can be used to sanitize. The housekeeping team has to be in the same shift. Various steps that we have put across here, so that one can avoid as much of spread. You can only contain it as much as possible and avoid any situation that can arise by a bad hygiene. So hygiene is going to be very critical here. Let's just quickly look at the next point. And Dave, I would like you to come here quickly and talk about how do you see the other more practices that can be said.
See, Manish, there are many things which is coming down into picture from the corporates. They are thinking in many ways to save their employees so that they are not infected. So it is one of the encouraging mode is to encourage the organization to emphasize on the self-car travel. That is one. The car lease model can be looked into picture, but most of the companies do have it already. The other companies can at least look into it, because that is the least weight of a person to get contaminated with any sort of a contagious disease or the virus which is going on. Mass employee transportation can be avoided with a reimbursement of petrol or a gas reimbursement as a part of the salary. That can be looked into. The fourth thing is that all the real estate, all the companies which are there as a tenant or into a multi-tenant building, they need to look into a space for the parking to be enhanced. That will be our biggest challenge if we go into the self-driven car model, because today, as we see in every city, the parking is always a challenge, and if we emphasize on to get the people of their own bikes and vehicles, real estate will be a great challenge.
Absolutely, you're right. Yeah, so quite many challenges now. While people would be thinking of using the personal car, the challenge for a facility department is to ensure that so many parkings are provided, and when the parkings are being provided, you also need to ensure that that is disinfected. Your proper cleaning is done. So it's not that easy. One has to look at every kind of arrangement and rearrangement to find a solution to avoid. But yes, one thing important what it comes out is your safety is in your hand, and every employee has to be very, very mindful about their own behavior in terms of their own self. Because right now you're not just even if you're getting affected, you're not the only one who you're getting affected. You're also going to affect other people around, who is going to be, whether it's your family or your colleagues or your peers. It's very important that as an individual, we also are very responsible about ourselves, about the way we carry ourselves, and what kind of precautions we are going to be taking, whether we use a public transport or even if we are using the employee transport. So yes, and at the company front, there are a lot of challenges in terms of, while you have to ensure that the health and safety is taken care, that's paramount, but it also reflects on the cost. We may not be able to give you a very, very correct perspective as to what the cost is going to look at, but let's just quickly cover on this topic as well, as to where do we see that, what's going to happen. So let's look at a pre-COVID situation. The average occupancy used to be 65% after removing the no-shows, and that's what the primary industry norms was in terms of the every company that was using it. But with the government mandate coming in, it's like 30 to 40%. Employee, if you're going to reduce that, so it's just going to have a direct impact on the cost, and your cost is going to go up. One has to be prepared to face the situation. While it is not a very sustainable model for companies, and where margins will be tough. So it's going to be a challenge across spectrum of the companies that is providing transportation to their employees, whether, like I said, whether it's IT, ITES or manufacturing, and not every company can work from home. So eventually the masses has to be taken to the workplace, which is the factories or the manufacturing plants, or certain businesses like BPOs still require people to be back on the floor. So each company would have their own SOPs, and a lot of collaboration will be required between all the stakeholders here. Large IT companies are dependent on United States of America for the business, and economy in the US also is not looking very good in the current situation. So there is a lot of doubts still, but the recovery is going to be slow, but it has to be ensured that the recovery is steady, and we are responsible for what we do going forward now. Let's look at what can be done with regard to avoiding this. How can we, Dave, you have any comments on this part as well?
No, it is not a comment. It is basically it is a time to sustain now, Manish. It is something like what we are, what we were, we will never be there. With the so we have to think of the alternative options. How do we see the future, and how do we gear up with the new norms?
True.
So it is basically, we are thinking that we will be doing that, but we do not have a path to what to do. So
absolutely. Right.
So it is basically, we are thinking that it is possible. Yes, we will make it possible, but the ways to make it possible needs to be coming into picture.
So just let me just quickly come in between. There's another thing which is going to take a serious stop, and while it was a part of saving cost also, I think those carpoolings are no more going to be in any longer a plan. People will not be taking lift with the strangers around anymore. I mean, they some of the solution which we were so used to, hitching the ride with somebody else using an app, but that might not be sure. I may not like to have somebody coming in my car who I'm not sure about, or if I don't know, or even if I know, I may not want him to come and sit in my car. Maybe from the safety point of view, because you don't know, anybody can be a symptomatic carrier of that thing. So yes, we'll. Do you see that is going to also take a brunt here?
Yes, yes, Manish. It will take a brunt, because there are many operators in the market as of today. As of yesterday, basically, they were operating with the share model. They are share model, and they were much more, and the people were much happy with that, because they used to travel the same distance with a lesser money rather than paying the entire amount going alone. So those models will not be applicable anymore. So hence it will be, that's what I said, Manish, it will be a new normal. New normal will bring challenges. We have to think, how do we mitigate those things?
Vishwanath, any quick comments on this?
Yeah, I think one easy comment, one easy thing that we could probably look at, like I was saying, including the HR, I think the policy of hiring employees in the near future also could be a very big factor for less travel time, using bicycles for nearby, using walking, etc., which you mentioned. I think those are some points, and see what other alternatives the tech companies come up with to make sure that it's easy ride. Back
So
to
yeah,
you.
very good point. Innovation is going to be the key now. While you will have to look at how do we reduce the capacity. The fact is, cabs and SUVs are reduced in capacity due to the fear of transmission. So is there a way we can handle that? Maybe not, because right now it is being deliberated whether it can be done or not. But the screen separators is coming as out as a quick suggestion here, where the vehicles there can be a separation between the driver and the employee while they're sitting. So in case that can possibly help in adding two passengers there instead of one passenger being taken because of the screen separator between the co-passengers. So that is a thought. I'll give you some examples of what is being planned or what people are looking at or experimenting with. Cost optimization can also come through the good use of technology, because today the manpower is also going to get hit if you may not have the necessary manpower coming and managing transportation from your workplace or office. So maybe technology can really help you to manage it much faster and easier in a shorter period of time. And so it's, like I said, it's a good time to look at technology as your partner. Apart from a good balance between a man and a machine is going to be a critical part now in this. We should also look at replacing your current fleet. Maybe you need to have a relook at your fleet mix, whether you can get more tempo travelers or buses instead of small cabs being used, because so that you can make more number of people travel together. One size will not surely fit for all, but yes, by end of June, July, one has to take you will, once you start operations, you will see how things are panning out, and that will have its own impact. And then one has to relook at the cost as it may come in. Procurement is going to be playing a very important role here, and probably there might be decisions one has to take in terms of the right from the transportation point of view, because it is a critical part. You need to get your employees back to your business as well. Simple. We can't be keep doing webinars all the time. We have to meet people again. We have to have communication going on. We have to have people coming back to workplace, because certain critical jobs require people to come back. Here are some examples of screens that is being provided. Just a quick glimpse of what can be done. You see in the first screen, there is a driver has been completely covered with the screen there. In the second picture, you see that the passenger sitting behind, there's a gap between the screen between the driver and the passenger to avoid any kind of contacts here. Here are some more options where, if in a way, if you're coming from, if you know each other, you can travel together, kind of a thing, if you're taking precautions. So these are the when, if you see in the picture here, you will see that there is a partition including between the driver and the second passenger as well here. So there are some suggestions. Yeah, this is still being experimented. We have to see how this really comes out. But we'll, as it is said, when you're thrown into a problem, then you start thinking of solutions, and probably some new solutions will come in the new normal. Quickly, quick words from both of you before we end this discussion. And before we end to this discussion, let me just quickly remember all those COVID warriors who have played a significant role in containing the virus spread. India has played a very significant role for a population like ours. The doctors, the nurses, the police personnel, the allied team members who have assisted us, security agencies, housekeeping staffs, the drivers, the media personnel, people at large, local politicians in state and center. Everybody has played their role at the company level, at the city level. Yeah, quick words from you, Dev and Vishwa.
Yeah. So just coming back to where you stopped, I think not only just the COVID members, I think we would also like to thank each and every individual who has raised queries on what, when, how, etc., which actually helped us kind of consolidate their queries into this seminar, into this slide. So I would definitely thank everybody who has shared their opinion, who has asked us questions, and who has given us challenges to kind of make sure that we think and answer them, Manish. And one thing that I would like to highlight is the drivers and the staff, the transport staff also has to be included in terms of our F&B services going forward, which so that they will not go outside on the road stalls to have their tea, coffee, food, etc. Back to you, Manish.
Yeah, so a lot of restrictions will be in place. Let's just quickly take some questions from our audience and see. We almost covering, almost closing to an
50
hour
minutes.
now. But let's just quickly take some quick questions. People are asking about chemicals which are recommended. Do you have any thoughts on that? What about eco-friendly two-wheelers which can be used? Is there something like a eco-friendly two-wheelers, considering that the two-wheelers can be a user can take
Yeah,
the
Manish.
two-wheeler? Yeah.
Yes, Manish. In fact, what I would recommend is every corporate has got a EHS manager, and I would definitely not suggest like an individual suggesting a particular phenol or a particular sanitizer. I think they would definitely go to the EHS team to kind of get the correct sanitizer, which is approved by their corporates for their usage. Second thing, in terms of the second question that you asked, can you please repeat that?
No, just that. Do you think that the two-wheelers, is there a subject sanitized two-wheelers, and do we allow two-wheelers now in tech parks?
Absolutely.
Also,
Thanks,
how do you
Manish.
keep a track of where the two-wheeler has been taken to? So these are the kind of question doubts which people will have.
Yeah, so you're talking about quick ride, for example, so I would
I'm
not
not
like to
talking
share.
about I'm not about anybody particular. I'm just
That's
saying
fine.
two-wheeler.
So, like I said, in an individual opinion, I used to use that probably, I would not be using it for a sanitization purpose. Same way, when I take a two-wheeler, like when I take a hired two-wheeler, I would probably not do it because of sanitization issue. So I may be very, very clear, but maybe the other person who used it may take a chance. So I think those are something I would always prefer a company provided transport, Manish. So that is my hardcore. Yeah.
There's another question which is quickly. There's another question which is declaration stating she doesn't stay in red zone and not suffering from any diseases to be obtained from user who is going to use corporate travel and also from the driver. Are you going to look at that?
Yes, Manish, we will be looking into that specifically. So that is the only way we can have the data with us. So that is the one way of certifying the person is authorized to travel. So that
Okay.
data needs to be that data is something
Nowadays, cops are not allowing more than two persons in a cab that includes driver, even if it is a third row or a three-row SUV. What's the way out in this case if this remains the norm even after the lockdown is lifted?
Vishwa to answer.
Yeah. So what actually happens there is due to this COVID scenario, there are some temp norms and permanent norms that the government would be pitching in to everybody, not just the corporates, to in fact to everybody for that matter, including public transport. So this, I think, it's not going to be like a permanent rule and regulation from the government to all of us, because then it will lead into a lot of tax burden to every citizen if the occupancy level in the public transport also goes down. Because it's because of this 50% occupancy, the tax burden on each and every individual will increase if this becomes a standard norm or a standard operating procedure. So, but I think in the right spirit, for at least for the next 1 or 2 quarters, we must follow what the government has said and ensure that once we get a vaccine or once we get some kind of a relief to kind of avoid this COVID situation, I am sure that the government will come back to its normal, but we should follow this principle of social distancing, and also in terms of traffic management, in terms of driving, in terms of ethical driving, I would say continuous, immaterial of COVID or no COVID.
Sure.
Back to you, Manish.
I also see a lot of questions on technology here. I'll just quickly pick one because there's too many of them. But if in case people have questions, please write it to the email ID shared earlier as well, so that we can answer you back in today. But one of the questions which has come in, we should also use self-geocoding tech apps to assess both drivers and employee do not travel from red contaminated zone. So the fact is, let me just quickly answer this question here. every address, when you use technology, every employee's address is geocoded, and because of that, if
Yes,
you
Shri.
hello. Yeah, so if you live in a red zone, the system will throw in that information, and it's easy to then manage it, and then the transport team can or your team leader can actually plan your scheduling accordingly or the rosters accordingly. Same is also important to know where the driver comes from, and that information also is required. There's one, and that also can be put into the system. The technology can help in terms of tagging, so you need to also geocode the driver's address, and where the vehicle is being parked. That's going to be important as well here. Uh, Dave, there's another question which has come here is if the vehicles, technically, generally what used to happen is the vehicle used to go and pick up employees directly from their homes, right? So if I'm living in, let's say, in Borivali, and then I instead of coming to office to let's say BKC, I would probably straight away go to the client employee's house and pick them up. So what kind of measures will be taken in that case? Will you allow that, or first
No,
thing the
Manish,
vehicle come to the office first?
it will not be allowed anymore. So this also, it was basically, it was a norm that the first pickup which is to go, the driver used to go directly to the employee's geolocation and pick them and then bring to the office. With the new normal, the drivers need to come down to office, sanitize the car, then start their trips. That will be the new normal. So if we are changing, we need to change many factors.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I think we have covered. I think a lot of people are appreciating the discussion. There are a lot of suggestions are also coming in. Questions are incidentally less, but suggestions are also there, and a lot of the doubts still hang in the air, which is rightly so, because every step that is being going to be taken is only towards avoidance of the spread. But how things are going to change eventually is something for us to wait and watch. But like I said, it's our responsibility individually to ensure that we are safe. And let's
Correct.
just look at that. Let me quickly bring in Aval also here. Aval Sethi, he takes care of the procurement and from Embassy Group. Aval, very happy to have you on this discussion. Just quickly, one question. I saw some of the questions coming in from a procurement point of view. Do you have any suggestions to make? How do you see procurement of vehicle? Are there renegotiation going to happen? Are we going to sit down across the table and have a discussion with our vendors? Also, companies has a certain responsibility towards the vendors. So how are you going to look at it to manage the already stressed environment of the suppliers or the vendor side of the partners? Because today everybody is a partner to each other. There's nothing like a vendor or none of them. We need each other. Everybody needs each other, and we have to work around. So what are you going to be some quick takeaways for everybody to understand?
So thanks, Manish. I think it's a great question and some good thought, but I think it's more around partnership and not just transportation, but in the last couple of weeks and months, I've seen that there has been a lot of collaboration and very close coordination that's built up with a whole lot of partners from organizations. And I think this is also a very classic case where while we understand that not 100% of the people will need to be transported to the office, so
Correct.
there is definitely going to be a reduced workload or a reduced load on the transport system. So the transport doesn't mean that everything will double up, but actually you will have to play a balancing act, ensuring that all the critical resources that are required within organizations are only picked up by your transport and get them to the office, while others are encouraged to work from home, especially the admin teams, the back office, and a lot of non-critical stuff. And also at the end of it, I think it has to be a very collaborative effort. The vendors understand now what the situation is in the market. The organizations, I think, understand, the stakeholders understand where they are. And yes, there will be certain limitations on the number of cabs that would be available in the market. But also the fact, I think that it's not going to be very critical from the point of view that because there'll be less number of people getting into the office, I think overall the transport can be managed well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Aval. That was a quick, very, very helpful insight. Rightly said, he used the word collaboration. Collaboration is going to be key here. And obviously, there will be expectations from the large companies, the large corporates to support industry as well, and support the service providers in times of stress like this. So it is going to be an interesting discussion when you actually do it with your vendor, with your partners, and how things are going to roll out. But yeah, mix and match, do take every step that is possible to save that penny, but without hurting the other side as well. We'll have to work on the sentiments and take this along. But overall, yes, it's going to be a new learning for all of us.
Yes.
And it's going to be new learning for as an individual, as a company, as facility providers, as a support team. It's all going to be an interesting journey to look at how we shape up. But with that, I would also like to say that please stay safe. That's the key. It's very, very important.
That's the new normal.
Yeah, that's the new normal. And but this also has brought us some interesting scenarios for us, right?
Yes.
The nature has turned on its head, and we are seeing some really, really amazing times in terms of the nature. We heard that dolphins are coming back into the sea in Mumbai. We are finding endangered species in Kozhikode walking on the road. There are birds in the sky. The air is more purer. So there was a joke that the trees have started feeling suffocated because of too much of oxygen around.
Correct, right.
So yeah, but then let's just hope we all will maintain this. That's the only aim. I think the nature has given us a lesson to learn, and probably at what cost the growth has to happen is that balance has to be brought in now between our financial needs and between the nature. So all of that is going to be critical. And with that, I would like to just say what Charles Darwin once said, and it's so true today. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives as well. It's the one that is most adaptable to change. And this is a time to adapt. This is a time when we all need to adapt to the current circumstances. And with that words, I leave it. I would like to again invite Aval Sethi to end this discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. So before we end, I would like to just make a quick introduction of the GACS. So GACS stands for Global Association for Corporate Services, and it is an association that is passionately driven by leaders in the field of corporate services. This is a forum of working professionals from across various sections of corporate services, providing knowledge management, crisis support, and networking opportunity to its members. And the GACS is available on its many social media platforms, including the website, which is www.gacs.world. You can also reach out with any specific queries or questions to the Bangalore chapter in particular on kchapter@gacs.world. And with that, I think it was a fantastic session, really great insights, great thoughts. We understand that these are personal perspectives, but based on what's happening in the world around us and whatever we've been able to analyze and interpret in our own ways. So great work, guys. And on behalf of the GACS Bangalore chapter, I would like to thank Manish Raj, the Vice President of Global Sales and New Initiatives, Move in Sync, Devabrata Burman, Senior Manager, Global Real Estate and Facilities, Ocwen, and Vishwanath Sitaram, Founder Member of ORCA, for the invaluable insights on the subject of employee transport and social distancing. I would also like to thank all of the attendees who've taken the time to attend today's webinar, and I'm sure each one of us is much more knowledgeable today and would be able to take some of the knowledge from today's session back to our organizations and be better prepared when the actual action starts. So thank you all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Vishwa, for your time. Thank you so much. Really nice.
Thank you, Manish.
And thanks to GACS for organizing this. From my bottom of my heart, thanks to the entire association and the members and the seniors who have given their insights all the time to help every industry folk. And you go a long way. All the best. Thank you so much once again for the time and for giving me this opportunity to conduct this session. Thank you a lot.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.